Well, it's now clear to us that the V argument, the valid argument, is a good argument. It has good logic. When we're talking about the connection between premises and conclusion, that's really what we're talking about, the logic of it. I mean, sometimes when you're talking on the street, you'll say, gee, that's logical, meaning that what the person said is reasonable. When we're talking about logic, facts are of no consequence in logic. Logic is just about the relationship between certain statements and certain other statements, and valid says that the argument has a good connection, a logically good connection, a logically strong connection between the premises and the conclusion. So, based on that, and you know, philosophers like to be very clear about what they're saying, so we have the following definition of a valid argument. DV, definition of validity. An argument is valid if and only if the following condition holds. Necessarily, if the premises are true, then so is the conclusion. Now just think about that. It was if the premises. Validity is an iffy kind of thing. As I mentioned before, has nothing to do with the facts behind the reasons. You could have no facts. You could start with a premise that in an argument that the moon is made of green cheese. Well, you'd say, maybe you like green cheese, so you might say, if the moon had green cheese, then, and I like green cheese, then I'd like to eat a piece of the moon. Now, that's not a good argument, but it's not because of the logic of the argument. Validity it's an iffy property. That is, you can have a valid argument. Does it tell you anything about the truth of the premises? The actual truth, I mean. Whether in fact they are true. Absolutely not. It just tells you that if they were true, then the conclusion would be true. In the same way, if I said, if I won the lottery, then I would buy a Ferrari. Does that mean I'm going to buy a Ferrari? No. I just said if I've got to win the lottery first. Validity is an iffy property. Now there's an alternative way of saying the same thing, mounts to the same thing, and here's my alternative definition. It's an argument's valid if and only if it's impossible for the premises to be true and at the same time the conclusion false. So if we go back to our example, all men are mortal, Socrates is man, therefore Socrates is mortal. It's impossible. You cannot describe an example without contradicting yourself in which it's true that every man is mortal, that is, will die at some point. Socrates is, let's say it's the philosopher that we're talking about, a man. You can't describe that situation and then describe the situation in which Socrates is immortal without contradicting yourself. So the test of validity, or a test of validity, mounts the same, the iffiness. The only time you can find out something is not valid if you can find a possible situation where the premises would be true and at the same time the conclusion's false. So you have to be able to describe that without contradicting yourself. And another way of putting that is, and it'll pop up in a second, at least I hope, the truth in a valid argument, the truth of the premises guarantees the truth of the conclusion. The truth of the premises aren't guaranteed, but the truth of the premises guarantees the truth of the conclusion, meaning we have an argument that has a good structure. That is, the conclusion will rest on those premises. It doesn't tell you that the premises are on a firm foundation, but it just says that if they were on a firm foundation, then the conclusion would be also.